Pressure is the signal you're aiming, right? Most people run from pressure. They avoid it. They minimize it. They organize their entire lives around escaping it. They call it balance. They call it self-care. They call it being realistic. But deep down, it's fear. Pressure makes people uncomfortable because pressure exposes something they don't want to see. It exposes the gap between who they say they are and who they actually are when things get heavy. Kobe Bryant didn't run from pressure. He ran toward it. Not because he enjoyed suffering, not because he wanted attention, but because he understood something most people never do. Pressure is not a warning sign. Pressure is a direction. Most people think pressure means they're in danger. Kobe understood pressure meant he was exactly where he needed to be. When the spotlight got heavier, he didn't step back. He stepped forward. When the expectations grew, he didn't ask for relief. He asked for more responsibility. When the margin for error disappeared, when every mistake was magnified in front of millions of people, he didn't look for excuses. He looked inward. That's the part most people miss. Because pressure doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. You don't suddenly become someone under pressure. You show who you already were. That's why most people avoid it. Because deep down, they know what pressure would reveal. They know that if the weight increased, the structure might collapse. And instead of strengthening the structure, they choose lighter weights. Smaller dreams, lower standards, safer goals. Kobe never did that. When the entire team looked at him to carry the moment, he didn't complain about the burden. He accepted it as the price of playing at the highest level. When the game slowed down and every possession felt like it could decide everything, he didn't shy away. He wanted the ball, not because he thought he was perfect, but because he trusted what pressure had already carved into him. And that trust wasn't built in the spotlight. It was built in silence. Pressure on game night was nothing compared to the pressure he put on himself when no one was watching. That's the difference. Most people experience pressure as something external: a boss, a deadline, a crowd, a bill, a responsibility they didn't plan for. Kobe experienced pressure as something internal, a standard he refused to lower. So when the world added pressure, it didn't crush him. It matched him. That's why he didn't ask, "How do I avoid this?" He asked a much harder question: "How do I carry more?" That question alone separates people who rise from people who retreat. Because avoidance is easy. Lowering expectations is easy. Convincing yourself that you don't need that much is easy. What's hard is staying in the fire long enough for it to change you. Pressure forces a decision. Either you grow into it, or you redesign your life to never feel it again. Most people choose the second option. They step down instead of stepping up. They shrink their goals instead of expanding their capacity. They call it maturity, but it's really surrender. Pressure didn't scare Kobe because he didn't associate pressure with danger. He associated it with opportunity. Opportunity to separate. Opportunity to prove something to himself. Opportunity to become someone most people never have the discipline to become. Pressure was the signal that the moment mattered. And moments that matter are never comfortable. If you think the moments that define your life will feel safe, calm, and perfectly timed, you've already misunderstood how growth works. Nothing that elevates you comes without weight. Pressure is the weight, and weight only breaks people who were never reinforced to begin with. That's why pressure feels so personal. It attacks your self-image. It attacks your confidence. It attacks the stories you tell yourself about who you are. Under pressure, excuses stop working. Under pressure, intention stops mattering. Under pressure, only preparation speaks. And most people know they're underprepared. That's why pressure feels unfair to them. They think pressure is something life is doing to them. Kobe understood pressure was something life was asking of him. And he answered, not with words, not with emotion, with behavior. Pressure didn't make him panic. It sharpened him. Pressure didn't confuse him. It clarified him. Pressure didn't overwhelm him. It organized him. Because pressure has a strange effect when you stop resisting it. It removes everything unnecessary. When the stakes are high, you stop caring about opinions. You stop caring about comfort. You stop caring about how things look. You care about what works. And that's where most people get exposed. They like the idea of high standards. They like the identity of being someone capable, but they've never lived under the conditions. Discipline does not negotiate. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you're burned out. It doesn't care if today has been hard. Discipline asks one question, and it asks it every single day. Did you do the work, or didn't you? That's it. No tone, no emotion, no sympathy. Most people hate discipline for that reason, because discipline doesn't comfort you. It doesn't reassure you. It doesn't adjust itself to your mood. It stands there, unmoved, waiting for you to show up, or not. At 4:30 inches the morning, the gym was empty. No cameras, no teammates, no crowd, no applause. While the rest of the world was still asleep, Kobe Bryant was already finishing his first workout of the day. Not starting it, finishing it. Not because he felt inspired, not because he was chasing motivation, because that was the standard. That's what most people don't understand. They think discipline comes from desire. They think it comes from wanting something badly enough. It doesn't. Discipline comes from identity, from deciding once and for all what kind of person you are and refusing to negotiate with that decision. Kobe didn't wake up and ask himself how he felt. He didn't check his energy levels. He didn't scan his emotions. He didn't wait for the right mindset. He moved. Because discipline isn't about feeling ready. It's about refusing to let feelings decide your behavior. Most people live the opposite way. They wake up and consult their emotions like a board of directors. Am I motivated today? Am I tired? Do I feel like it? Is today a good day to push? And every time they ask those questions, they hand control of their future to something unstable. Emotion. Emotion is inconsistent. Emotion is reactive. Emotion is short-term. Emotion doesn't build anything that lasts. That's why Kobe treated emotion as noise. Not because he didn't feel it, but because he refused to obey it. There's a difference. Discipline isn't the absence of emotion. It's dominance over it. And that dominance is uncomfortable, because the moment you stop negotiating with yourself, excuses lose their power. You can't say, "I'll do it tomorrow." You can't say, "I'll wait until I feel better." You can't say, "I just need a break." Those phrases stop working when discipline becomes non-negotiable, and that's why most people avoid it. They like the illusion of progress. They like planning. They like talking about what they're going to do. But discipline strips all of that away. It replaces intention with action, and action is unforgiving. You either did the work, or you didn't. There's nowhere to hide. Kobe understood that early. He understood that talent creates options, but discipline creates outcomes. Without discipline, talent is just potential, and potential is useless if it never gets expressed. That's why he didn't train when it was convenient. He trained when it was necessary, and necessity doesn't wait for comfort. The reason 4:30 a.m. matters isn't the time itself. It's what that time represents. It represents a moment when no one is watching, a moment when there's no reward, a moment when quitting would be easy and invisible. That's where discipline is either built or exposed. Most people only work hard when someone is watching. They need accountability. They need praise. They need pressure from the outside. Remove the audience, and the effort disappears. Kobe didn't need witnesses. Because discipline doesn't perform, it operates. It doesn't care about recognition. It cares about repetition. Over and over, day after day, especially on days that feel empty. That's the part people don't want to hear. Discipline is boring. It's repetitive. It's lonely. It's thankless. There's no adrenaline rush. No emotional payoff. Just quiet consistency. And that's exactly why it works. Because while everyone else is waiting to feel ready, discipline is already stacking results. Most people don't lose because they're incapable. They lose because they keep negotiating. They negotiate with their sleep. They negotiate with their effort. They negotiate with their standards. Just this once. Just today. Just until things feel easier. Those small negotiations feel harmless, but they compound. Every time you negotiate with yourself and choose comfort, you weaken your authority over your own life. You teach yourself that your word doesn't matter. And once that happens, discipline collapses. Kobe never allowed that erosion. Not because he was superhuman, but because he understood a simple truth. If you don't control your habits will control you. And habits don't care about your goals. They only care about repetition. That's why discipline had to be absolute. No excuse. Because excuses are addictive. They sound reasonable. They feel justified. They give you permission to stop. And permission is dangerous. The moment you give yourself permission to be inconsistent, you lose the right to complain about inconsistent results. That's the trade. Discipline isn't harsh. Reality is harsh. Discipline just removes the lies that soften it. Most people think they need more motivation. They don't. They need fewer negotiations. Your problem isn't lack of motivation. Your problem is that you keep negotiating with yourself. You say you'll start tomorrow. You say you'll push harder next week. You say you'll take it seriously when the timing is right. And while you negotiate, time moves on. Opportunities pass. Momentum dies. Standards slip. Kobe didn't wait for timing. He created it. By showing up before it felt reasonable. By working when no one demanded it. By treating discipline as a fixed rule, not a flexible suggestion. That's why discipline doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels restrictive. It takes away your options. It removes your ability to drift. And drift is what most people are addicted to. Drift feels safe. Drift feels flexible. Drift doesn't demand commitment. But drift never leads anywhere meaningful. Discipline does. Because discipline creates structure. And structure creates freedom. That sounds backwards to most people. They think freedom comes from doing whatever they want. It doesn't. Freedom comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. From knowing that when something needs to be done, you will do it regardless of mood, regardless of comfort, regardless of circumstances. That kind of self-trust is rare, and it's earned the hard way, through days that feel pointless, through mornings that feel too early, through repetitions that feel invisible. Kobe earned that trust. That's why pressure didn't shake him. That's why expectations didn't overwhelm him. Because discipline had already done the work before the moment arrived. Pressure reveals. Discipline prepares. Without discipline, pressure crushes. With discipline, pressure sharpens. And that's why discipline has no value if it's conditional. If you only show up when it feels good, you don't have discipline. You have preference. And preference disappears the moment things get hard. Discipline stays. And once discipline is in place, something else becomes possible. Commitment. Real commitment. The kind that doesn't depend on roles, recognition, or comfort. The kind that will do whatever it takes. And that's what comes next. Real commitment doesn't choose the spotlight. It chooses the result. That's the part most people don't want to accept. They say they're committed. They say they want to win. They say they're all in. But what they really want is to be seen winning. They want the moment. They want the recognition. They want the image of success. And the moment that image disappears, so does their commitment. Kobe didn't operate that way. He didn't commit to how things looked. He committed to what needed to be done. Sometimes that meant taking the shot. Sometimes it meant passing the ball. Sometimes it meant sitting on the bench and doing nothing that would ever show up on a highlight reel. Most people can't handle that. Because ego hates invisibility. Ego wants proof. Ego wants validation. Ego wants to feel important. But commitment doesn't care about importance. Commitment cares about outcomes. Kobe understood that winning isn't about being the hero in every moment. Winning is about doing the necessary thing, even when it costs you attention, even when it costs you credit, even when it costs you approval. That's why he was willing to play roles that didn't feed his ego. Not because he lacked confidence, but because his confidence wasn't dependent on applause. Most people's confidence is fragile. It needs reinforcement. It needs praise. It needs reassurance that they matter. So they avoid situations where their contribution might go unnoticed. They avoid roles that don't look impressive. They avoid work that doesn't come with recognition. And then they wonder why progress stalls. Because commitment that depends on visibility isn't commitment. It's performance. Real commitment is quiet. It shows up early. It stays late. It does the work no one thanks you for. And it doesn't complain about it. Kobe didn't romanticize sacrifice. He didn't talk about it. He didn't explain himself. He just did what the moment required. If sitting on the bench helped the team win, he sat. If being hated made the standard higher, he accepted it. If being misunderstood protected the mission, he stayed misunderstood. That level of commitment is uncomfortable because it strips away the story most people tell themselves about who they are. They like to believe they're leaders. They like to believe they're talented. They like to believe they deserve more. But real commitment doesn't ask what you deserve. It asks what the situation demands. And that demand is often humbling. That's why most people avoid true commitment. They want control over how they're perceived. They want to manage their image. But commitment doesn't allow image management. It forces you to choose between being effective or being admired. You rarely get both at the same time. Kobe chose effectiveness, and that choice came with consequences. He was labeled difficult. He was called selfish. He was criticized for being intense. But intensity wasn't the problem. The problem was that his standard exposed everyone else's. When someone is truly committed, they make others uncomfortable, because commitment raises the bar without asking permission. It forces comparison, and most people don't want to be compared to someone who refuses to lower the standard. So they attack the person instead of confronting the gap. Kobe accepted that too, because commitment doesn't require agreement. It requires alignment. Alignment between what you say matters and how you act when it costs you something. Most people want success, but what they really want is recognition. They want to be acknowledged as successful without doing the parts that don't look successful. They want the finish line without the invisible miles. And when the work stops rewarding their ego, they slow down. They hesitate. They disengage. They stall. That's why so many people plateau, not because they hit their limit, but because they refuse to operate without validation. Kobe didn't need validation, not because he didn't feel doubt, but because doubt didn't get a vote. Commitment overruled it. He didn't ask, "Will this make me look good?" He asked, "Will this move us forward?" That question simplifies everything. It removes emotion. It removes entitlement. It removes distraction. It leaves only responsibility. And responsibility is heavy, because once you commit to results, you lose the ability to blame. You can't hide behind effort. You can't hide behind intention. You can't hide behind circumstances. You either delivered or you didn't. That level of accountability is terrifying to most people. They prefer roles where failure can be explained away, where effort is enough, where showing up counts as progress. But commitment doesn't accept participation trophies. It demands contribution. And contribution isn't always glamorous. It's repetitive. It's frustrating. It's often invisible. That's why real commitment is rare. It requires you to detach your self-worth from attention, to be okay with doing critical work that no one applauds, to accept that sometimes the most important role is the least visible one. Kobe didn't shrink from that, because his identity wasn't tied to being seen, it was tied to being effective. And that identity allowed him to stay committed when others drifted. When the work got ugly, when the criticism got loud, when the reward disappeared, that's when commitment reveals itself. Not when things are exciting, not when success is close. But when the work becomes unglamorous and the outcome is uncertain, most people quit there, not officially. But internally, they still show up, but they stop caring. They stop pushing. They stop taking responsibility. They protect their image instead of the mission. Kobe never did that, because he understood something simple and brutal. You don't want success. You want recognition, and that's why you stall. Because the moment recognition slows down, your effort does too. Real commitment doesn't stall. It adjusts. It adapts. It stays, even when it hurts, even when it costs you, even when it leads straight into the next unavoidable truth: pain. Because no commitment survives long-term without passing through pain. And that's where this goes next. Pain becomes identity. Pain is not a signal to stop. It's a test. That's the truth most people refuse to accept. They feel pain and immediately ask the wrong question. How do I get rid of this? How do I make it easier? How do I avoid feeling this again? And in asking that question, they reveal everything. Because pain doesn't show up to punish you. It shows up to measure you. It measures the distance between your standards and your tolerance. Most people want high standards with low discomfort. They want excellence without friction. They want growth without cost. That's not how reality works. Pain is the currency. Broken fingers, worn down knees, a body that carries the evidence of years spent pushing past comfort. These weren't accidents. They were receipts. Kobe didn't ask how to eliminate pain. He asked how to continue through it. That question alone changes everything. Because the moment you stop trying to escape pain, you start learning from it. Pain tells you where your edges are. Pain tells you what still needs to be strengthened. Pain tells you which parts of you are fragile and which ones are real. Most people never learn that. They treat pain like a malfunction, like something went wrong. But pain isn't a malfunction. Pain is information. And information is only useful if you're willing to receive it. Most people aren't. They interpret pain emotionally. They let it define them. They take it personally. They think pain means they're failing. They think pain means they chose wrong. They think pain means they're not built for this. Kobe understood pain meant he was paying the price of a high standard. And high standards always collect payment. You don't get to demand excellence without accepting discomfort. That trade is non-negotiable. Pain is the difference between wanting something and being willing to become someone. Because pain forces adaptation. Either you adjust upward or you retreat. Most people retreat. They lower their goals. They justify slowing down. They tell themselves stories about balance and sustainability. And sometimes those stories are true, but most of the time, they're just protection. Protection from confronting the fact that they don't want it badly enough. Pain strips those stories away. It doesn't care how convincing your excuses sound. It doesn't care how logical your reasoning feels. It only responds to one thing: capacity. Can you hold this or not? Kobe trained his capacity, not just physically, mentally, emotionally. He built a relationship with pain that most people never will. He didn't romanticize it. He didn't chase it for attention. He accepted it as part of the identity he chose. That's the key. Pain became part of who he was, not something that happened to him, something that shaped him. Most people want pain to be temporary. They want it to pass so they can return to comfort. Kobe accepted pain as a companion, not permanent suffering, but permanent presence. Because at high levels, pain doesn't disappear. It just changes form. Physical pain becomes mental strain. Mental strain becomes emotional weight. Emotional weight becomes responsibility. And responsibility hurts. Carrying expectations hurts. Carrying standards hurts. Carrying the knowledge that you can't afford to be average hurts. That's why most people choose comfort. Comfort dulls pain. But comfort also dulls growth. Pain sharpens. It forces precision. It forces focus. It forces you to eliminate everything unnecessary. Under pain, you stop pretending. You stop caring about opinions. You stop chasing validation. You stop doing things that don't matter. Pain clarifies priorities. That's why people who never endure pain never develop clarity. They drift. They try everything halfway. They commit to nothing fully. They confuse movement with progress. Pain doesn't allow that confusion. Pain demands honesty. Honesty about your preparation. Honesty about your discipline. Honesty about what you're actually capable of right now. And most people don't like that honesty. They'd rather live in possibility. They'd rather believe they could do it someday. Pain collapses someday into now. It asks, can you do it today? Kobe answered that question over and over again, not because he was fearless, but because fear didn't make decisions for him. Pain showed up, and he didn't ask for relief. He asked for continuity. How do I keep going? That question is brutal, because sometimes the answer isn't comforting. Sometimes the answer is slower progress. Sometimes it's adaptation. Sometimes it's enduring discomfort longer than feels reasonable. But that answer builds something most people never develop: durability. Durability is what separates talent from legacy. Talent shines when conditions are good. Durability survives when conditions collapse. Pain builds durability, only if you let it. Most people don't. They treat pain as a sign they should stop. Kobe treated pain as a sign he was inside the work. That's why pain didn't make him hesitate. It made him precise. It made him intentional. It made him ruthless about what mattered and what didn't. Pain removed luxury. And luxury is the enemy of greatness. Luxury makes you soft. Luxury makes you distracted. Luxury makes you fragile. Pain does the opposite. It hardens. It narrows. It strengthens. Not overnight. Over years. That's why pain isn't dramatic. It's repetitive. It shows up again and again, asking the same question. Are you still willing? Most people say no, quietly. They don't quit publicly. They don't announce it. They just pull back. They lower intensity. They avoid challenge. They choose paths that don't hurt. And in doing so, they avoid becoming anything exceptional. Kobe didn't avoid pain. He integrated it. It became part of how he measured himself. Not by how good things felt, but by how much pressure he could absorb without breaking. That's a different metric. And it changes how you see everything. Pain no longer scares you. It informs you. It tells you where the work is. It tells you what still needs to be built. And once pain stops scaring you, something else disappears with it. Fear of failure. Because failure is just another form of pain. And if you've already accepted pain as part of the process, failure loses its power. It becomes feedback. And that's where this goes next. Fear of failure is failure. Being careful isn't intelligence. A lot of the time, it's just fear wearing a smarter outfit. Fear doesn't announce itself honestly. It doesn't say, I'm scared. It says, let's be realistic. It says, now isn't the right time. It says, we should wait until things are clearer. That's how fear survives. It disguises itself as responsibility, as maturity, as common sense, and most people fall for it. They mistake hesitation for wisdom. They mistake caution for depth. They mistake avoidance for strategy. Kobe didn't. He missed shots. He lost games. He failed publicly, repeatedly, in front of the entire world. And the world remembered every miss, every bad decision, every loss replayed, analyzed, criticized. Most people would have adjusted their behavior to avoid that pain. They would have played smaller. They would have taken fewer risks. They would have protected their image. Kobe did the opposite. He didn't play to avoid mistakes. He played to win the right way. That distinction matters. Playing not to lose and playing to win are not the same thing. One is defensive. The other is decisive. When you play not to lose, you hesitate. You second guess. You pass responsibility instead of taking it. When you play to win, you accept the risk. You accept that failure is part of the price. You accept that mistakes are inevitable. You accept that criticism will follow. Most people never accept that price. They want certainty before they move. They want guarantees before they commit. They want proof before they take responsibility. But there is no proof in advance. There is only action and consequence. Kobe understood that failure wasn't something to be avoided. It was something to be survived. That mindset changes everything. Because the moment you stop fearing failure, you stop shrinking. You stop protecting yourself. You stop managing perception. You stop optimizing for safety. And safety is seductive. Safety feels smart. Safety feels calm. Safety feels controlled. But safety doesn't win. Safety maintains. And maintenance is not how anything exceptional is built. Winners accept risk, not recklessly, not blindly, but deliberately. They understand that every meaningful outcome carries uncertainty. Every attempt that matters has a chance of going wrong. And that's not a flaw in the system. That is the system. Losers don't see it that way. They call risk irresponsible. They call boldness arrogance. They call decisive action reckless. They hide behind words like realistic and practical. But what they really mean is this: I'm afraid of being exposed, afraid of missing, afraid of being judged, afraid of being wrong. So they choose paths where failure is unlikely and success is impossible. They choose comfort over consequence. Kobe didn't. He understood that fear doesn't keep you safe, it keeps you average. Fear lowers your ceiling long before you ever reach it. It tells you when to stop, even when nothing is actually wrong. It convinces you that caution is virtue. But caution never changed anything. Caution never led a team. Caution never built momentum. Caution never created separation. Caution preserves the status quo. And the status quo rewards no one. Kobe accepted that failure was part of the journey, not as a lesson in humility, but as feedback. Missed shots weren't proof he should stop shooting. They were information about timing, about positioning, about preparation. Failure didn't define him, it informed him. Most people let failure define them. They attach meaning to it. They say, "I'm not good enough. I'm not built for this. I should play it safer." And from that moment on, they shrink. Kobe didn't shrink. He adjusted. There's a difference. Adjustment comes from strength. Avoidance comes from fear. Fear keeps you frozen. It traps you in analysis. It traps you in preparation. It traps you in endless planning. You think you're being productive. You're not. You're hiding. Kobe wasn't hiding from anything. He stepped into moments that could break him. And sometimes, they did. But he didn't let those moments decide who he was. He decided that himself. That's why fear didn't control him. Because fear only controls people who need certainty. And certainty doesn't exist at the level Kobe chose to operate. At high levels, everything is uncertain. Every shot matters. Every decision has consequences. Every mistake is amplified. Fear can't survive there. It either gets conquered, or it becomes the reason you never belong there. Most people choose the second option. They convince themselves they're being smart. They convince themselves they're being patient. But really, they're just waiting for a version of life where risk disappears. That version never comes. Kobe didn't wait. He accepted risk as the cost of participation. He understood that failure wasn't the opposite of success. Fear was. Fear stops momentum. Fear stops growth. Fear stops you before you ever test your limits. And that's the tragedy. Most people don't fail because they try and miss. They fail because they never try at full capacity. They hold back. They hedge. They protect. And in doing so, they guarantee one thing. They will never find out what they were capable of. Kobe found out, not because he was fearless, but because fear didn't get to make decisions for him. And when fear stops deciding, something else happens. You enter a different territory, a place where people either admire you or resent you, a place where standards create division, a place of polarization, and that's where this goes next. Standards that inspire by force. Kobe didn't inspire people with speeches. He inspired them with standards. That difference matters, because words are cheap. Anyone can talk about discipline. Anyone can quote motivation. Anyone can sound convincing for 5 minutes. Standards don't care how you sound. Standards show up every day. They show up early, they stay late, they don't explain themselves. Kobe didn't lecture teammates about effort. He didn't sit people down and give them life advice. He didn't try to persuade anyone to work harder. He simply lived at a level most people weren't prepared to match. And that created tension, because high standards don't motivate everyone. They confront them. When someone raises the bar without apology, people have two choices. They either rise or they leave. There is no middle ground. That's why true standards are uncomfortable. They don't politely ask people to improve. They silently demand it. Kobe's presence alone forced a decision. You couldn't coast around him. You couldn't fake intensity. You couldn't hide behind effort. Your habits were visible. Your preparation was exposed. Your excuses sounded weak in comparison. That's why some people admired him. And others resented him. Not because he was cruel, but because he was consistent. Consistency at a high level is threatening. It removes the illusion that success is complicated. It proves that results are tied to behavior. And when behavior becomes the standard, comfort disappears. Most people don't want to be inspired that way. They want encouragement without comparison. They want motivation without accountability. They want to feel good without changing. Standards don't allow that. Standards force alignment. They ask a silent question every single day. Are you willing to live at this level or not? Kobe never softened that question. He didn't lower expectations to make people comfortable. He didn't adjust his pace to keep everyone included. That's why his standard worked. Because standards that adjust themselves stop being standards. They become suggestions. And suggestions don't build anything. A high standard does something brutal. It makes mediocrity impossible to hide. That's why people either grow around it or push away from it. You see this everywhere, not just in sports. In workplaces, in relationships, in families. When one person refuses to lower the bar, the environment changes. Some people step up. They sharpen. They improve. Others withdraw. They complain. They say the standard is unrealistic. But unrealistic compared to what? Comfort? Kobe's standard wasn't unrealistic. It was just inconvenient. And inconvenience is where growth lives. Most people confuse inspiration with encouragement. They think inspiration should feel good. They think it should lift them up emotionally. But the kind of inspiration that actually changes behavior rarely feels good. It feels demanding. It asks more of you than you wanted to give. It removes your excuses. It shows you what's possible and makes your current effort look insufficient. That's why standards are polarizing. If your standards don't scare people, they're not high enough. Not because fear is the goal, but because fear reveals distance. Distance between where someone is and where the standard sits. And that distance creates pressure. Pressure to adapt. Pressure to improve. Pressure to either grow or go. Kobe accepted that pressure. He didn't apologize for it, because lowering the standard to keep everyone comfortable would have betrayed the mission. And missions don't care about feelings. They care about execution. Kobe's standard wasn't about dominance. It was about integrity. Integrity between what he believed mattered and how he lived. He refused to say one thing and do another. That integrity made him impossible to ignore, even when people disliked him, especially when they disliked him, because dislike often isn't about personality. It's about contrast. Contrast between effort levels, contrast between discipline, contrast between commitment. High standards make contrast unavoidable, and contrast forces people to confront themselves. That's why standards inspire more powerfully than words. They don't ask for agreement. They demand a response. Most people want to inspire others without risking rejection. They want to be liked. They want to be accepted. They want to belong. Standards risk all of that. When you raise them, you automatically narrow the circle. Not everyone will stay. And that's the price. Kobe paid it. He accepted being misunderstood. He accepted being labeled difficult. He accepted isolation. Because lowering the bar would have cost him something far more important: respect for himself. Standards are lonely. That's the part no one likes to talk about. When you truly commit to a high standard, fewer people can follow you. Not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling. And unwillingness always looks for justification. They'll say you're too intense, too demanding, too extreme. What they really mean is this: you're asking me to change, and I don't want to. So they leave. Or they stay and resent you. Kobe understood that. And he didn't chase approval to fix it. Because approval is fragile. Standards are permanent. And once you accept that standards will polarize people, you stop trying to please everyone. You stop negotiating. You stop softening edges. You choose clarity over comfort. And clarity always creates division. That division is not a flaw. It's proof the standard is real. Kobe didn't inspire everyone. He inspired the right people, the ones willing to rise, the ones willing to suffer, the ones willing to be held to something higher than their feelings. That's the kind of inspiration that lasts. Not the kind that feels good in the moment, but the kind that changes behavior over time. And when you live that way long enough, one final truth emerges. The same standards that inspire some people will make others hate you. And that's where this ends. Polarization and the final truth. This isn't arrogance. It's a difference in values. That's what most people misunderstand. When Kobe said he couldn't relate to lazy people, he wasn't attacking anyone. He wasn't claiming superiority. He wasn't trying to insult. He was stating a boundary a line he refused to cross. Kobe didn't hate people who chose comfort. He just refused to lower his standards to fit in with them. And that distinction matters, because most people confuse acceptance with alignment. They think if you don't adapt to the group, you're being difficult. If you don't soften your pace, you're being selfish. If you don't slow down, you're being arrogant. But that's not arrogance. That's clarity. Clarity about who you are and who you are not willing to become. The moment you raise your standards, something predictable happens. Your circle shrinks. Not because people are bad, not because they lack potential, but because higher standards demand a higher price. More effort, more discipline, more discomfort. And not everyone is willing to pay that price. So they drift, some quietly, some angrily, some while pretending it was their choice. And that's where loneliness enters. Real loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone. The loneliness of being different. Of moving at a pace others can't maintain. Of caring about details others ignore. Of refusing to joke away what matters to you. That kind of loneliness hurts. And most people will do almost anything to avoid it. They'll lower their standards. They'll dilute their ambition. They'll pretend they don't care as much as they do. Because fitting in feels safer than standing apart. Kobe didn't choose safety. He chose alignment. Alignment between his values and his behavior. And that alignment came with isolation. He accepted that. Because being surrounded by people who tolerate your potential is worse than being alone while you pursue it. Loneliness is the tax of excellence. Most people aren't willing to pay it. They would rather belong than become. They would rather be liked than respected. They would rather be comfortable than capable. Kobe made the opposite trade, and that trade polarized people. Some saw discipline, others saw obsession, some saw commitment, others saw rigidity. Some saw standards, others saw pressure. But the truth was simple. He refused to live below his capacity, and that refusal made him impossible to ignore. Polarization isn't a side effect of high standards. It's proof they exist. If everyone is comfortable around you, your standards are too low. If no one feels challenged by your presence, you're not demanding enough. High standards force a reaction. People either rise or they resent. There is no neutral response. Kobe accepted both outcomes. Because approval was never the goal. Integrity was. Integrity when no one was watching. Integrity when effort went unnoticed. Integrity when praise disappeared. That's where identity is built. Not in public moments. Not in big speeches. Not in highlight reels. But in private, early mornings, late nights, repetitions no one sees. That's why the final truth is brutal and unavoidable. You don't become who you say you are. You become who you are when no one is watching. Not when motivation is high, not when pressure is on, but when there's no reward and no consequence except self-respect. That's the moment that defines you. Kobe didn't build his identity in front of cameras. He built it in empty gyms, in silence, in pain, in discipline, in standards that never negotiated. That's why he didn't need to explain himself. His life explained everything. And now, that leaves only one question. Not about Kobe, about you. When no one is watching, when there's no applause, when there's no pressure from the outside, who do you choose to be? Because that answer is already shaping your future. Whether you admit it or not, and it always has been, silence.